I was just an ordinary food delivery girl, riding my old electric scooter through narrow city streets to make a living day by day. But, ironically, after carelessly mocking the author of a sappy CEO romance novel, I suddenly found myself transmigrated straight into the very story. I wasn't the glamorous female lead, nor even a well-written supporting role with a beautiful backstory. I was pure cannon fodder, a background character meant to appear briefly and vanish. My job was still delivering food, except now it was in a world full of overbearing CEOs and endless drama. That afternoon, while on my way to deliver a bouquet, I happened to run into Liliana Whitelock, the textbook definition of a romantic CEO heroine, stunningly beautiful, fragile like a porcelain doll, eyes red as if she had been crying, chestnut brown hair cascading under the golden sunset. She sat blankly on the curb, caught at a romantic crossroads in her life, hesitating between Evan Cyrus, CEO of the Cyrus Group, and Bernard Smith, the talented lawyer of Smith and Associates. I sat down beside her, eyed the bouquet of 99 roses in her arms, and decided to break the script. My tone was as serious as if I were offering life or death advice. Don't choose Evan Cyrus. His company is so stingy their afternoon tea is just soda crackers. That's a sign they're on the verge of bankruptcy. Pick Bernard Smith instead. His law firm doesn't even bother with meal coupons, which means they're loaded. Liliana blinked in surprise, then seemed to genuinely ponder my words. I left, but in the rearview mirror I could still see her sitting there, deep in thought. I never imagined that one offhand comment would bring trouble straight to my door. That night, back in my tiny rented room, I opened the delivery app and saw a 1-star review with the reason, "Too talkative." I didn't need to guess who left it. It was clearly Evan Cyrus himself. Just because I told the heroine not to pick him, the arrogant CEO had personally dealt with me in the cruelest way possible in the delivery business, sabotaging my rating. I didn't know it then, but this was only the first step into a whirlwind of chaos, where a food delivery girl like me would soon be caught between two powerful CEOs, countless absurd situations, and secrets even the author hadn't anticipated. After that unfair 1-star blow, I collapsed onto the narrow bed in my damp little room, exhausted and fuming. All month I'd been writing nonstop, only for one bad review to erase all my effort. It made me want to scream. But I wasn't the type to give up easily, especially knowing the man behind it was Evan Cyrus, the male lead of this ridiculous romance world. Just as I was about to shut my phone and tell myself I'd deal with it tomorrow, a new order popped up on the screen. Customer, Ben Peterson, a name I knew well. In the original story, he was Evan's highly capable assistant, carrying the company on his back while the boss was too busy, falling in love. Later, Ben would turn to the dark side out of jealousy for the heroine, only to be redeemed in the final chapters. In other words, he was dangerous, but interesting. I accepted the order, bolted out the door, and sped to the luxury apartment complex where Ben lived. When I handed over his iced coffee, he didn't seem annoyed at the interruption. If anything, he politely invited me inside. After a few pleasantries, I mustered all my courage, bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle, and confessed, "I have a request. I hope you can help me." It took only 10 minutes to explain everything. I needed the 1-star review from Evan erased, or my food delivery career would be over. Ben listened quietly, then gave a small smile before saying, "Come to Cyrus Group tomorrow. I'll figure something out." The next morning, I arrived right on time in front of the most luxurious skyscraper in the city. Ben was already waiting by the elevator, smiling as he led me inside. I thought he would take me straight to Evan's office to get the review removed, but instead he said, "Just wait in the break room, I'll be right back." The break room of such a big corporation was shockingly shabby, a loose, dripping faucet, not even a single packet of instant coffee. A few employees came in, casually complaining that the entire department had gotten food poisoning yesterday from something the boss had ordered, and that for afternoon tea each person only got one segment of an orange. I had to stifle my laughter, but in my mind, it only confirmed one thing: Evan truly was the king of stinginess. I was still chuckling when the door swung open. A tall figure stepped in, 6 feet 3 inches, broad-shouldered, a face carved like a statue, and eyes as cold as ice, Evan Cyrus in the flesh. He glanced at me and said in a low voice, "You're the delivery girl?" Ben had clearly told him that I wanted to apologize and ask for the review to be removed. But instead of agreeing, Evan made an absurd proposal: "From today, you won't be delivering food anymore. You'll stay by Liliana's side and relay whatever I want her to hear." I almost burst out laughing. I loved my delivery job, the feeling of customers eagerly waiting by their door when I arrived. But Evan, completely unfazed, promised to pay me $10,000 a month just to be his personal loudspeaker. Before I could even refuse, he pressed a slip of paper with an address into my hand and told me to go meet Liliana immediately. I had no idea that my reluctant nod in that moment would mark the beginning of the most chaotic chapter of my life in this romance novel world. Following the address Evan gave me, I climbed onto my old electric scooter, the engine whining as if complaining about its fate. After nearly an hour of rattling through suburban streets, I stopped in front of the grand gates of an opulent mansion, and instantly recognized it as the Cyrus estate, the very place where, in the original story, countless domineering CEO locks up the heroine scenes took place. A stone-faced butler led me upstairs, stopping before a massive wooden door. He knocked lightly and spoke through the crack, "Mr. Cyrus has sent someone to deliver a message." From inside came a loud thud and a furious female voice, "Get out. I don't want to hear anything from him." I instinctively shrank back, almost turning to leave. But $10,000 a month wasn't something to walk away from. Clearing my throat, I softened my tone, "Miss Whitelock, it's me, the flower delivery girl from yesterday." There was a brief silence, then the click of a lock. The door cracked open just enough to reveal a pair of swollen, walnut-like eyes. The moment Liliana saw me, she pulled me inside and quickly locked the door. The room was spacious but cold, curtains drawn tight, the only light coming from a dim yellow desk lamp. Liliana sat on the floor in a pure white dress, looking exactly like a figure painted into a somber oil painting. "I thought about what you said yesterday," she murmured. "If Evan really treats his employees that poorly, his company must be having financial problems." I didn't want to be a burden, so I broke off the engagement. "But he's keeping me here." I barely managed to suppress a laugh. In the original novel, Evan was stingy with the whole world but willing to lavish money on Liliana. The problem was, she had never seen his employees fighting over single segments of an orange. Suddenly, Liliana gripped my hand, her eyes glistening like someone drowning who had just found a lifeline. "You're a good person. Can you help me get out of here? I want to find Bernard." I almost agreed on the spot, but remembering my mission, I spoke slowly instead. "First, would you like to hear Evan's message?" She stayed silent. I took that as a yes, narrowed my eyes slightly, and imitated Evan's tone, 1 part indifferent, 7 parts cold. "If you dare to run, I'll feed this entire estate to the fish." Liliana shivered, a single tear sliding down her cheek. Lifting her chin, her voice turned firm, "Tell Evan Cyrus that he can imprison me, but he will never cage my heart." I went back and delivered her words verbatim to Evan. He lazily asked, "Did she run away?" "No." "Still there," I replied, holding out my phone with the QR payment code. Evan raised an eyebrow and immediately scanned it, $20,000. Leaving the building, I couldn't shake the thought that keeping Liliana locked up was wrong, even in a fictional world. Unlawful detention was a crime, CEO or not. And the only person capable of standing up to Evan right now was Bernard Smith. I headed to the offices of Smith and Associates. Bernard looked exactly as the novel described, tall, refined, with a warm, spring breeze smile. When I told him Liliana was being kept at the Cyrus estate, his brow furrowed. He rummaged through a drawer and handed me a lighter with a restaurant logo on it, along with a thick envelope. Tonight, give this to Liliana. Light a fire, and I'll be waiting outside. I frowned at the lighter. You want her to set something on fire? Just as a signal. Evan won't dare make a move if his father is at the estate. I'll handle the rest. In that moment, I knew I had stepped deeper into the power and romance struggle between the three main characters. And I could faintly sense that this game was about to turn far more dangerous than any cliché romance plot. That night, I was assigned to deliver several evening gowns to Liliana. Evan claimed they were for upcoming social events. In reality, it was the perfect chance to slip her Bernard's lighter. Her room was still pitch dark, silver moonlight streaming through a gap in the curtains and casting a pale glow over her weary face. I set the gowns down on the table, then quietly pressed the lighter into her hand, whispering, "Tonight, Bernard will be waiting outside. When he sees the fire, he'll act. I'll have my scooter parked right below your window." She gave a small nod, a glimmer of hope lighting up her eyes. 1:00 a.m. The room was utterly silent, the only sound the ticking of the wall clock. Liliana put on the black gown Evan had given her, the one she intended to use as the signal, and flicked the lighter. A small blue and gold flame flickered to life, slowly eating away at the fabric. In an instant, the entire dress caught fire, releasing the sharp, acrid smell of burning cloth. She tossed the flaming bundle onto the bed. The fire spread quickly, devouring the sheets and comforter. I immediately shouted, "Fire! Somebody help!" But before I could see anyone coming, water suddenly sprayed down from the ceiling. The sprinkler system had activated, drenching both Liliana and me until we were soaked like drowned rats. The fire signal plan was officially drowned in its own flood. With no other choice, I switched to plan B. Liliana suddenly staggered, clutching her forehead, and collapsed into my arms. I cried out, "Miss has fainted. Get a doctor." The butler rushed in, his face full of concern. "I'm a doctor. Let me examine her." I rolled my eyes. Of course, the butler doubling as a doctor. Perfectly normal in CEO land. But I wasn't about to give him the chance. One quick, clean chop to the side of his neck, and he crumpled to the floor. "Oh my God, is he dead?" Liliana gasped. "No. I know how to hold back." "Quick, get the keys." I rummaged through the butler's jacket, found a ring of keys, and flung open the window. Below, my old electric scooter was waiting. "You jump first." Liliana squeezed her eyes shut, exhaling sharply as if she were about to leap out of an airplane, then hurled herself out the window. I followed right after, landing on both feet, my knees jolting painfully from the impact. No time to complain, I fired up the scooter and sped straight out the main gates. The wind whipped against my face, the engine groaning in protest, but it still carried us swiftly toward the rendezvous point. Bernard was already waiting at the intersection, dressed in a crisp white shirt, holding a helmet. But before I could hand Liliana over, blinding headlights swept across us. The sleek black Maybach belonging to Evan roared toward us like a storm. I shoved the helmet into Bernard's hands and pushed Liliana onto his scooter. "I'll hold him off." "Get her out of here." Bernard nodded sharply, twisted the throttle, and the scooter shot into the darkness. I turned back to see Evan stepping out of his car, eyes blazing with a fury that could have set me on fire. The chase began. I drove the Maybach I'd borrowed, trying to weave through the narrow streets to shake him off. But Evan was a skilled driver, and before long, I was cornered in a dead-end alley. He strode toward me, each step heavy, his hand gripping my collar. "Tell Bernard Smith, If he dares to touch what's mine, I'll make sure he can't show his face in Sea City again. I forced a weak smile. Message received and will be delivered. Do I get paid for this? Evan gave a cold snort and released me, but threw in one last warning. If I find out you didn't pass it on, you're dead. I had just turned to leave when I saw Ben Peterson appear at the mouth of the alley. He handed me a jacket, his tone calm. You're soaked. Put this on. I slipped it over my shoulders, noting that Ben still seemed like the only one among these CEOs who acted remotely normal. At the time, I had no idea that he was actually the most dangerous link in this entire story, and that tonight's escape was only the prelude to a string of far worse events. After the night we fled from the Cyrus estate, Liliana sent me her new address and invited me to live with her. My rental contract had just expired, so I packed a few belongings and took a taxi over. The building she'd chosen immediately gave me a bad feeling, damp smell in the air, dim hallways, and somewhere the faint reek of rotting seafood. The apartment itself was barely 50 square meters, with one bedroom and a small living room. Liliana cheerfully pulled me inside, as if she had just found her ideal roommate. Once I settled onto the creaky sofa, I asked, "Didn't Bernard help you find a better place?" Liliana smiled faintly. Actually, this is Bernard's place. He moved into his office to sleep so I could stay here. My jaw practically hit the floor. A famous lawyer, whose employees all lived in luxury apartments, was himself living here. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I peeked through the peephole and recognized Bill, an old colleague of mine from the food delivery world. He smiled warmly and handed me a takeout bag. "Here's your lunch." Liliana brightened. "Bernard must have ordered this for us." Bill turned to leave but, before stepping away, spoke in a serious tone, "If anything happens, call me immediately." That night, I lay awake for hours because of the couple downstairs arguing nonstop. Meanwhile, Liliana, after days of keeping silent, began telling me about her past. She had once been a well-known designer, but a scandal, her entanglement with Evan and Bernard, had caused her career to plummet. I encouraged her to return to online design work while I began making plans for us to find a new apartment. Using part of the $30,000 Evan had paid me, I rented a small place in a quieter neighborhood. Liliana was surprised, but I told her, "Men can let you down, but sisters will help you stand up and live well." Our new life was peaceful. Liliana regained her creative rhythm, and I went back to delivering food. But out there, both Evan and Bernard were going mad searching for her. Evan plastered reward posters across the city, the bounty starting at $100,000 and rising to $5 million. Bernard, on the other hand, appeared on every media outlet, making dramatic public confessions. Liliana was so spooked she wore a mask every time she stepped outside. That evening, we planned to celebrate after Liliana signed several new contracts. I was busy in the kitchen while she said she'd take out the trash. But 10 minutes passed and she still hadn't returned. When I called, she didn't answer. I rushed downstairs to search the area. An old man collecting recyclables told me he'd seen Liliana leave with a man. My blood ran cold. Just as I was trying to process this, my phone rang. A distorted voice came through a filter, "Tell Evan Cyrus, if he wants her, bring the equity transfer agreement." "Who are you? Where's Liliana?" I demanded. "Find Evan first, then you'll know." The call ended, leaving a knot of unease tightening in my chest. I opened the Wheels of Fire delivery drivers group chat. Urgent. Need to find a woman near lovely community, somewhere open and echoey. Bill responded immediately, "Give me the address. I'll find her." While waiting, I sped straight to the Cyrus group. Luckily, I caught Evan in the underground parking garage. When he heard the news, he slammed his fist onto the hood of his car. "He's dead. Whoever laid a hand on her, I'll destroy them." This isn't the time for threats. Go save her. I snapped back. A message from Bill popped up. Found her. Old cotton mill warehouse, outskirts. Evan drove like a man possessed, and soon we arrived. Bill and a few others were hiding in the bushes outside, reporting, "Security's off tonight." Just one young guy inside, and we heard a woman crying. I was still figuring out how to sneak through the back when Evan kicked the front door wide open. And there, tied to a pillar, blindfolded, with a gleaming knife pressed to her neck, was Liliana. And the man holding the blade was Ben Peterson. In that instant, I realized the real storm had only just begun. The air inside the warehouse was thick with dampness and the metallic tang of blood. Liliana was still in the clothes she had worn to take out the trash, her neck pressed against the razor-sharp edge of the knife. Across from her, Ben Peterson stood tall, the familiar calm in his expression gone, replaced with eyes as cold as ice. Evan stepped forward, his voice deep and commanding, "Let her go." Ben's lips curved into a smile, one that sent a chill crawling down my spine. "Didn't expect you to find her so quickly, Evan. But if you want to take her, hand over the equity transfer agreement." Evan reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a file. I thought he would hand it over immediately, but Ben stopped him. "Have her bring it to me." It was only then that I realized her meant me. Evan shoved the file into my hands. I walked slowly toward Ben, my heart pounding wildly. When there was only a meter between us, Ben snatched the file, then suddenly grabbed me by the collar, squeezing tight. "Thanks for the help, transmigrator," he hissed into my ear. My blood froze. "How did he know?" Ben sneered, as if reading my thoughts. "You think you're the only one? Before you came, there was someone else just like you, babbling about stopping me from becoming the villain. I killed him. And from that moment, I knew I could take this company for myself." I struggled to breathe, his hand like a steel vice around my neck, my throat burning. Evan stood frozen, unwilling to make a move with the knife still pressed to Liliana's throat. "I've been watching you ever since you met Liliana. That jacket I gave you? I planted a tracker in it. That 1-star review? Also me. All to get you here tonight." His voice dropped, dripping with malice. "And now, you're going to die." My head was spinning, but my hand managed to slip into my pocket. Just as he tightened his grip, I pulled out my life-saving weapon, a can of pepper spray. Without hesitation, I pressed the nozzle all the way down, spraying him directly in the face. Ben screamed, releasing me, his eyes bloodshot from the burn. Evan lunged forward, driving a hard kick into his chest and sending him crashing to the ground. At the same time, Bill and a few of my fellow delivery riders burst in from outside, subduing Ben in mere seconds. I coughed violently, clutching my neck as I stumbled back, my heart still racing. Liliana was untied and collapsed into my arms. I thought. "I'd never see you again," she whispered, her voice trembling. The wail of police sirens grew louder outside. Bill called out, "We called them already. It's over." Ben still tried to struggle, but the beams of police flashlights cut through the warehouse. Moments later, he was handcuffed and dragged away amid shouted commands. But before he was shoved into the car, he turned to glare at me, his eyes burning with hatred. "There will be others like me. And one day, you'll pay the price." I didn't reply, only tightened my grip on Liliana's hand. Tonight, we had won. But his words still sent a chill down my spine. 6 months later, Ben Peterson was sentenced to death for multiple counts of murder. The news made headlines everywhere, but for me and Liliana, it was simply the final full stop to a long nightmare. We moved to Old Town, renting a small riverside house. By day, I continued the food delivery job I loved. Liliana ran her online design studio, grew flowers, and brewed coffee for the occasional visitor. One evening, as we both lay back on deck chairs in the yard, stargazing, Liliana turned to me and asked softly, "That day, when Ben called you a transmigrator, does that mean I'm just a character in a book?" I was silent for a moment, then told her the whole truth. Liliana's eyes widened, then she gave a small laugh, which quickly faded into a thoughtful frown. "If that's true, then I must have been unbelievably foolish." I smiled and squeezed her hand gently. No. The story now isn't following the old script anymore. You're not a side character, and you don't belong to anyone. You're the author of your own life." And so, on the quietest street in Old Town, inside our little flower and coffee shop, our story went on, without any author to write it for us. From an ordinary, nameless food delivery girl, I accidentally stumbled into the world of a dramatic CEO romance novel. I met Liliana, the fragile heroine caught between two powerful CEOs, broke the original script, and was swept into chases, schemes, and secrets beyond imagination. Together, we escaped the mansion, faced Ben Peterson, the hidden villain, and in the end, rewrote our own ending. Now, in a small riverside town, with no gilded cages, no power games, we live simply, yet freely, because sometimes, happiness isn't found in a story someone else has already written, but in taking up the pen and writing your own. Asterisk.